Hello and welcome to Ag News for April 2018. John Grimes, Duane Rigsby. We're going to talk about trade wars possibly, some also winter to spring, and then also spring planting. Hello everyone, welcome to Ag News for April. John Grimes, we're talking about transitioning springtime into springtime from winter. There's lots of nice things going on with the weather. What do you think about it?
Well, it's been a challenge, this month. I'm not sure if March came in like a lamb or went out like a lion. I'm not sure how that all played out.
Yeah.
But we've had a little bit of everything this month. We've had some snow, we've had some frost, and generally wet conditions.
Mm-hmm.
So farmers are kind of on hold as far as doing spring activities.
It has been a very strange time. I mean, the beginning of the week we had snow.
Yes.
And now we're going to be 80 degrees tomorrow.
And if I saw the extended forecast, they're talking about being back in the 30s Monday.
Possibly some snow next week.
So you know what they say about Ohio weather?
Give it a day.
Yeah,
give it a day, it'll change.
It'll change,
That's
absolutely.
right.
But we're going to start off today talking about maybe some things that are out of the farmer's control.
Yeah, in this news thing.
Trade. You hear on the news all these political posturing and discussions. Mm-hmm. To be honest with you, it's got the farming community a little nervous as we go into planting season, because these things that are being negotiated between governments are quite honestly out of the farmer's control. Mm-hmm. Like a lot of things are, the farmer doesn't control the weather, but this is one thing that it just kind of feels like agricultural commodities are a bit of a pawn in a chess game. It's kind of what it feels like. And listen, I know we knew some of this was coming when the campaign was going on. We heard about some of our Trans-Pacific partnerships. That's a big term for, I guess that would be the somewhat equivalent of Nafta, like what we have with Mexico and Canada, and that's being negotiated now too. Mm-hmm. So I guess I think farmers in general don't like the uncertainty. It makes it hard to plan, and so there's people negotiating, and I understand we want what's good for agriculture. We want a fair trade deal for agriculture, but they're also negotiating cars, metal, electronics,
everything. Right?
Everything. Yeah. So we're a part of this package. So it's difficult. We can't always get everything that we think is good for us. That slang, not in my backyard.
Yeah.
That's we got to look at the big picture, and that's hard. I mean, it really is hard to do when we think about we don't want to sacrifice too much for agriculture for the good of the whole, but. Some of that may happen, So I want to start off with a slide that shows exporters of beef. We're talking about beef today, and this is a little bit of a busy slide, and some of the colors might be a little harder to see there. But black is the United States, purple is India, red's Brazil, green's Australia, and you look at that, and historically we go back and we were the dominant country at the turn of the century, and you see how we took a nosedive there in 2003 and 4, and we've talked about that before. That's the cow that stole Christmas. That was the one mad cow case that we found out in Washington State.
Right.
And it took a long time to get exports back to close to where we were, but as you see, we're exporting approximately 2.5 billion pounds. And that's quite a bit of our production.
Yeah, that's huge.
And we're very close with these countries. These are our main competitors. And Australia has been a consistently strong exporter. Brazil maybe was way back, and then they've expanded their production or exporting. The one that might catch you off guard is India. You know,
India surprises me there.
Well, and you've got this belief that all cows are sacred in India, religious reasons, and that still holds true. What a lot of people don't realize is a lot of that beef total is water buffalo.
Oh, really?
That's what that is, and they're not subject to some of the religious concerns.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Well, that's
it is beef, but it's maybe not what you and I are used to, and it's probably a cheaper product that gets exported to a lot of different places. So, and we would be, of those countries, far and away the largest grain-fed producer. A lot of that is grass-fed beef. Now, Brazil is ramping up there, being more like us, but a lot of that is going to Southeast Asia, and we're Brazil and Australia. Australia is a big competitor in Southeast Asia, and so with all that said, it's why you see it's such important. I think the dollar figure I've most recently seen, it's around $280, $290 is what every steer that sells, the value is coming from exports, and like Japan really likes our high quality stuff. It's competing against Wagyu beef, and they want our better stuff. Yeah. But in a lot of Southeast Asia, grass-fed beef, like from Australia or South America, is a challenge. So that's kind of where we're at on just general beef exports. Now, I think the next slide might talk about China. That is who we're talking about here, is a lot of the negotiations with China. Now, this red line shows, if you remember, back late last spring, early summer, we finally opened up trade with China after years of being out of that market. Now, this is a really steep curve you see here, but it's also a lot lower numbers than what we saw in the previous slide. This is we're only talking about millions of pounds here, and we're only talking single digits. And if you look at to the far left, the black dots where we started out this year, and obviously 2.4. So, you know, it's trending the right direction. Yeah. But if they're going to put a larger tariff on us, that's going to slow down. So, you know, this is just, the door's been cracked open. It's not wide open, and there's lots of potential there. They're very specific about what they want. They want a certain type of record keeping, medications, how they're identified. So we are kind of getting accustomed to their standards, what they want. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. I think obviously we're talking about beef today, but there's other agricultural commodities that it impacts. I know a lot of pork. Pork was one of the first ones they identified as to raise tariffs on, and there's much more at stake for the pork industry than beef today in China. It's just there's more pork, it tends to go there. So how this all plays out, Duane, I don't know. I think the next slide we may talk about soybeans. And if I was a soybean producer, I'd be very interested in what happens in China. If you look at those are U.S. soybean exports, and the orange line reflects what we send to China. And look what part of our total soybean exports that is. Wow. The blue represents the rest of the world. And so that's pretty dramatic. And again, that's over the same kind of time frame. That's from the turn of the century to basically the first of the year. So that shows you what kind of impact that could have on the soybean industry. And there's trickle down effects. So if soybeans can't go to China, or fewer amount, that's going to flood this market or other markets. That's going to drive the price down. So as we go into planting season, that makes folks pretty nervous. To be honest with you,
that could make a farmer real nervous.
So
now here's a question, John. I don't see a lot of this in the news.
Well, you're not going to see it in the mainstream news, but it is in the agricultural press.
It is in the
agricultural. Yeah, absolutely. Right. It's not going to make the evening news or the local 11 o'clock news. But we're in this negotiation stance, but it is front page stuff in agriculture. So I don't know where it's going to go. And again, we're talking about two superpowers, United States and China, and there's a lot of the world watching because there's such trickle down effect for what happens here. So I don't know, Dwayne, and I'm not an economist by trade, but I can see those numbers and know that it has potential to impact the livestock industry because of feed costs.
Yeah.
If I was a soybean producer and I've already I'm getting ready to start planting and I've already kind of locked in what I'm going to do this year, you can't really change now. It's
No, you're right.
as soon as the weather turns fit, you're going to see planters and things out in the field.
Yep.
I think maybe our next slide is going to talk about that a little bit, planted acreage. And this kind of shows you a trend over the same time frame. And again, these figures are from USDA and Cattle Facts projections are combined here. But this talks about millions of acres planted to these three primary crops in the United States. And you over time, corn generally has been ahead of soybeans. But if you look here in the last year, those lines have kind of crossed just a little bit. Soybeans are projected to have more acreage this year than corn because of projected profitability. So here we have this event with China that could change the whole thing.
Could blow it up.
Blow it up. Yeah. Exactly right. So I don't know. And you see how wheat has generally transitioned down. There's probably that's more reflective of general crop rotation things. Wheat's not been as profitable, so there's fewer acres devoted toward it. I think about when I was growing up, the traditional rotation of corn, bean, wheat to grass. Well, we've taken the grass out of a lot of it because there's fewer people with livestock, but even now we're talking about just kind of generally corn, soybean rotation. And farmers have already, like I said, bought their chemicals, bought their seed, they've already rented the ground, they've locked in all these costs. And then we have politicians sitting at the table that could impact what the final price will be. So it's an interesting time, and you don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but you hear rhetoric and bluster and threats and things like that. And if you've got tens of hundreds of $1,000s invested in this year's crop to plant, it would make you nervous.
Absolutely, it would. I don't understand how some of these, and we're talking big farmers probably.
Oh, yeah.
Some of the little farmers maybe, and I'm, in southern Ohio, it's still going to play an impact on them a little.
Whether you're a part-time farmer or a full-time farmer, it's going to impact potentially your bottom line.
Right.
So I don't know. I'm just telling you what's going on today. I don't know how it's going to go. You want to have faith in our negotiators. There's got to be give and take. You just all can't be one-sided. I think that's something that I hear people say, well, we need to put a border up. Basically, I'm not talking about immigration now. I'm talking about trade.
Yeah.
It's got to be equitable and fair. You can't make it one-sided.
Right.
And apparently, at least our current administration feels like there's some of that's been one-sided so far, and they're trying to negotiate.
They're trying to make it a little even.
Exactly. Yeah. And so how it plays out, we don't know, but I think it's going to be interesting. I think you see these figures, and especially if I was a corn or soybean producer, especially soybeans in China, that's a pretty dramatic thing. Now, as far as beef, I don't want to see beef, the tax raised, but right now we're kind of in our infancy with China, as far as trade. So at least from a beef perspective, it's not as dramatic as some other commodities.
Right.
Okay, I would say pork, but incredibly more so soybeans. It could be a damaging thing. We have trade partners in our back door, Canada and Mexico, and they're important to us. I mean, we showed you who are the top countries as far as who we export to, or no, excuse me. That first slide was talking about what countries are the biggest beef exporters in the world. Okay, but where we send it to. I think this is really close. In no specific order, but Japan, South Korea, Canada, Mexico, and I forget who the fifth is right now. But that's where we send our beef.
That's our normal.
That's our normal outlet. So Nafta is another one that's you've been hearing about that in the news some because a lot of that involves automotive and more recently talking about steel and aluminum, things like that. But beef is very, very conscious of what's going on with NAFTA too. So all this rambling is what I'm saying is it's a volatile thing, and that's the beauty and challenge of farming is we talk about the weather being out of our control, but this is certainly out of, and we can call our politicians, but at the end of the day, we're putting faith in government officials to do this, and we have to do that a lot in our life, to be truthful with you.
Oh, you're right, in various forms other than farming.
Exactly. So I mean, I don't want to dwell on this too much longer, but it's like it's very much covered in agriculture press and e-newsletters and things like that, and press releases. And I know the cattlemen's the National Cattlemen's Association is paying close attention to this. So yeah, it may not be in the mainstream media, but it's definitely in front and center with agriculture.
Okay, well that's great. What else we got, John? We're talking about this weather too.
Yeah, last month, we talked about mud and damage to pastures, and you and I've done a videotape, which I would encourage people to go to our beef team website at beef.osu.edu and check out repairing damaged pastures, a video that we did last month with Rory Lewandowski. I think it's very timely, and now's the time that some of that's going on. So if you go watch that video, I believe it's around 20 minutes, it talks about some specific things that you can do to repair pastures. Right. But you get excited when you get some of the 70-degree weather we're supposed to have this week, and then Mother Nature kind of reminds you that winter may not be over.
It's not quite over yet.
We've had a couple hard frosts in the last few days.
Yeah.
So, with all that said, from a beef perspective, this last several months, basically, at least most operations since sometime in November to today, we're still feeding hay.
Yes.
You'll see the round bale feeders out in the field, and think about the consistency, the dry matter differences of feeding a dried, cured product, and now we're turning out on soon to be lush grass.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, when you mow your yard, if you ever get hit by grass clippings or anything, you just feel like you're almost taking a shower. They're full of water. The grass that's growing early in the season is not very much dry matter, and the challenge for beef producers is, and I know cows are very anxious to start eating something green instead of something dry. You can put hay out, but they're going to go out and they're going to pick and nibble at the grass just as soon as it comes up. Yeah. Well, with these colder temperatures, I would say it's behind schedule right now. It's not as developing as fast, but when the day comes, and it will, the temperatures elevate, the grass will expand and grow, and I say grass and legumes, clovers, alfalfa, whatever, and so the cows will switch to that. Now, we've talked about when's the most popular months of the year to calve, and we've kind of gone through, we're in that, the second half, kind of starting to wind down. February, March, and April are the three biggest months of the year we calve. So what you have is you've got animals that started lactating, been eating a dry feed, and now we're going to turn them out on lush grass, and they have to eat so many more pounds
of that
because it's full of water.
Yeah.
And this is what we like. We want the cow to do the harvesting, and anytime you let them do the work instead of a tractor or a haybine or a baler, your costs are cheaper. But what I'm saying is, and this, just looking at the background, this picture was probably taken in May, something you see the lush leaf foliage in the back, and it's not right now where trees haven't opened up, but I don't see any pastures this lush right now, and you can see how far the cow's nose is into the canopy there, so to speak. But she's eating a lot of water in that picture.
Right.
Whereas that might only be 10-15% dry matter, where what they've been eating through the winter has been more like 85-90%, maybe even higher. So what's happening is, in some cases, they're going to get in a deficit situation as far as nutrients. They're eating too much water. Depends on how quick this grass grows. But I can tell you, if you've got a hay bale out on a day like that, they're probably not going to eat it. They're going to have to be really hungry to go eat a hay bale because they want to eat the lush grass.
They want, right. They want that nice tender stuff.
Exactly. So what I'm saying here is, you may have to do some supplemental feeding with some grain or a protein supplement to make sure those lactating cows don't get too thin. And we've talked about this before. a cow's going to take care of herself first. But if she's got adequate nutrients, she'll obviously milk and feed her calf. But she's also got to get repaired from calving into a situation where she can rebreed and get pregnant for next year's calf. So it's a delicate balance right now as far as making sure that they have enough to eat, and we have to watch costs, but corn, at least today, is reasonably priced. And so what I'm saying, maybe just a few pounds of corn. If they quit eating hay, you may have to supplement with an energy source such as corn or a protein pellet or something like that to keep them in a good nutritional state. So I know that's a little bit of a broad brush with it, but it's really critical with, like, say, first calf heifers or young cattle that, and this actually applies to heifers that they're not even raising a calf. If you've been managing replacement heifers and they've been getting dried feed and you turn them out on grass, because listen, at this time of the year, we're all tired of feeding hay and slopping through the mud.
Right.
So it'd be like you being on a steak and egg for breakfast diet and then going to bran flakes.
Yeah,
I mean, there's going to be an adjustment period.
Yeah,
maybe that wasn't the right analogy, but
well, I mean, in a sense, it is.
It's a big change in diet composition, and we have to be conscious of that. Yeah. So sometimes, I mean, I don't like to supplement feed any more than I have to, but you think about the long-term ramifications, it's probably necessary.
Yeah. Now, when this happens, John, does that affect the calf? When all of a sudden we're feeding a lot of hay and stuff, and a little maybe higher protein or whatever we're doing, and then all of a sudden the mother gets out on the grass and we're still milking, does that milk change for the calf, or is that normal?
Not drastically. It may some, but in general that calf is at least for the first 2 to 4 months of its life is dominated by a liquid diet. It's consuming milk. Now, yes, the composition of the milk may change some, but it's not like what the cow's going through.
Yeah, so it's not going to affect the calf too much.
Drastically, unless the cow's milk production really drops.
Really drops. Okay.
I'd be more concerned about the drop in production as in the composition of it.
Okay.
Okay. Yep. And beef cattle milk is just not the same as dairy cattle. It's not as rich. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
So probably not, but you can definitely see the difference. If you want to tell what kind of a diet a cow's eating, look at her manure piles.
Yeah.
Because when they're eating hay, it generally is a denser, they always talk about the hat test. How tall does it set? But when they get out on grass, it's more liquid.
Right.
The water that they're consuming, it'll be reflected in the manure.
Okay.
So lastly, today, I think we have a picture of an activity I hope some farmers see. And this is something we're not going to see this week. If you look, you see the trees aren't leaves out. It could be April. But if you see that drill, you see a little bit of dust behind it, and I don't think we're going to see too many fields with dust behind them today. But this is a site that I know some farmers would like to get this done. Last month we talked about repairing pasture seeding into partial stands, and this could still happen. I guess what I'm more wanting to talk about today is timing.
Yes.
We can seed a grass seed at any time of the year. Now, whether it's going to establish and have a long-term life is a different thing. Generally, for Southern Ohio, we talk about getting these tasks done by the 1st of May. And we can seed up into May or June. The question is, how hot and dry is it going to get in the early lifetime of that seedling? So, textbook, we like to talk about getting these seedings done in Southern Ohio by the 1st of May. Northern Ohio, we may have a few more days because it's a little cooler in Northern Ohio. But in Southern Ohio, we talk about the 10th of May. Now, this has been a challenging winter. That picture, I don't know when it was taken, but it could have been 1st of April. It could have been the end of March. We've had years like that where the ground's in good shape and you see a nice prepared seed bed. You see that tractor not making any significant tracks.
No, that's
that wouldn't happen today.
It would not.
So,
although I mean it's getting close.
Yeah,
but I'm afraid our weather again.
If it rains, but if it's 70 degrees and a windy day, it's amazing how fast
it is. How fast it'll dry out.
Will change. So, what I'm saying to you is, if you get a window and you can get it done, and is May 1 the absolute cutoff? You can fudge a few days. All I'm saying is don't put it off much later than that, or you're going to really increase the risk of success. Now, we talk about seeding rates. Most of your full, like I say, if you're just going to seed orchard grass or fescue, a full stand, nothing else, you'd be probably talking 15 to 20 pounds. If you're talking about alfalfa, you'd probably be in a similar rate, 15 to 20. But when we start talking about blends, and most of our beef cattle, hay fields or pastures, we're talking about some type of combination, some diversity in this, the between grasses and legumes. Then we've got charts that, you can, maybe you'll have 10 pounds of a legume and 10 pounds of a grass, or some combination thereof. So it's got to fit your specific situation. But I just wanted to put that as a reminder as the clock's ticking. And if we don't get it done through the weather conditions this spring, the next window you've kind of got is 1st of August through middle of September. And it's the other way, getting it established before cold.
Should we put any fertilizer down?
Actually, we'd hope some of your soil testing had been done by now, so but you can still apply, and probably you saw that was a bare ground seeding. He probably needed to put some type of cover crop like oats to keep weeds down as well. So fertility is important, weed control, and again, if you're not ready for this, I would not encourage you to half do it. Don't make it a solid effort. Don't do it, compromise too much on doing it the right way.
All righty. Well, John, we're out of time. I appreciate all the information, and we'll keep watching out for those trade wars coming about anyway.
I hope you don't hear a lot. That means they're behind the scenes quietly negotiating. But
if they make mainstream news, we're in trouble.
There's probably some noise being made.
You're right. So, John, I appreciate everything. We'll see everyone next time.